The Vex Armada darkened the skies over Millfield, their crystalline ships refracting sunlight into painful prisms across the town below. It had been 3 days since the alien fleet had appeared in Earth's atmosphere, and 2 since they'd begun their methodical destruction of military installations worldwide. With organized resistance crumbling, the aliens had moved on to civilian centers. Tom Miller watched from his basement window as the strange crafts hovered above Main Street. At 28, he'd never imagined he'd witness an alien invasion, outside of movies. His sister Kate clutched her 9-year-old son Andy to her chest, trying to keep him from seeing the devastation outside. "They're landing," Tom whispered, his voice cracking with fear. The first Vex soldiers stepped onto Earth soil with surprising grace despite their towering 9-foot frames. Their bodies were covered in what looked like iridescent scales, and their 4 arms each ended in 3-fingered hands. Their eyes, 4 of them, tracked in different directions as they scanned the surroundings. "What do they want?" Kate whispered, rocking Andy back and forth. "Whatever it is, it's not good," Tom replied, remembering the footage from Washington, D.C. before the broadcasts went dead. The Vex had rounded up humans like cattle, marching them onto their ships. No one knew what happened after that. The aliens moved house to house, their strange weapons, like staffs topped with pulsing orbs, blasting doors off hinges. Tom could hear screams as neighbors were dragged into the street. "We need to move deeper into the basement," Tom instructed, pulling his sister and nephew away from the window. "They'll reach us soon." Kate nodded, her face pale. "I tried calling Mom again. Still nothing." Tom felt a pang of worry. Their mother, Margaret Miller, Grandma Maggie to Andy, lived out on an old farm 10 miles outside of town. She'd refused to leave when the invasion started, insisting she'd seen worse in her 72 years. Tom had tried to convince her otherwise. But the stubborn woman wouldn't budge. A crash upstairs sent dust raining from the ceiling beams. The aliens had reached their house. "Hide behind the water heater," Tom ordered, grabbing an old baseball bat from against the wall. It was a pathetic weapon against alien technology, but it was all he had. The basement door splintered, and a Vex soldier descended the stairs, its strange multi-jointed legs bending in unnatural ways. Its head swiveled, 4 eyes scanning the darkness until they fixed on Tom. "Human," it spoke, the words somehow forming without visible lips. "You will submit." Tom raised the bat, his hands shaking. "Stay away from my family," the alien raised, its staff, the orb beginning to glow with an ominous blue light. Tom knew he was about to die, but he stood his ground. Then came the sound that would later be described by survivors worldwide as humanity's battle cry. The unmistakable roar of a souped-up V8 engine, followed by screeching tires and a thunderous crash from above. The Vex soldier's head swiveled upward, momentarily distracted. It was the only opening Tom needed. He swung the bat with all his might, connecting with what he hoped was a vulnerable spot. The alien staggered, but didn't fall. Before it could recover, the ceiling above them partially collapsed as someone, came crashing through the floor above, landing directly on the alien with bone-crushing force. As dust cleared, Tom stared in disbelief at the figure rising from the alien's now still body. Grandma Maggie stood up, brushing debris from her floral apron, her gray hair still perfectly set in its weekly perm. In her hand was a cast-iron skillet, now dented, from impact with the alien's skull. "Sorry I'm late," she said calmly. Traffic was murder. Maggie Miller had been baking apple pies when the invasion began. She'd seen the news, watched the panic unfold on her small kitchen television, and had simply turned it off and continued crimping the edges of her crust. In her 72 years, she'd lived through wars, recessions, personal tragedies, and the entirety of the internet age, all of which had taught her one thing: panic never helped anything. When her neighbors fled, cramming their cars with hastily packed belongings, Maggie had waved to them from her porch, rocking chair creaking rhythmically. "Good luck," she'd called, but made no move to join them. It wasn't that Maggie didn't understand the danger. She simply refused to be driven from her home by anything, human or otherwise. 3 days into the invasion, when the power grid finally failed, Maggie had sighed and headed to the barn. Her late husband Jack's 1969 Dodge Charger had sat dormant for nearly 5 years, covered by a tarp, waiting for the grandson who would one day inherit it. Jack had modified it extensively during his life. Reinforced frame, roll cage, and an engine that could wake the dead when it roared to life. The old car started on the second try, as if eager for one last adventure. Now, standing in Tom's collapsed basement, Maggie surveyed the scene with calm, practical eyes. "Where's your sister and Andy?" Tom pointed toward the water heater, where Kate emerged with Andy clutched tightly to her chest. The boy's eyes were wide with wonder as he looked at his grandmother and the alien she had literally dropped in on. "Grandma?" Andy whispered. "Did you kill it?" Maggie poked the alien with her foot. "Just knocked the wind out of it, I think. These things are tough." She glanced up at the hole in the ceiling. "My entrance was a bit dramatic, but I had to improvise. When I saw them entering houses," Tom stared incredulously. "You drove a car into my house?" "Through your house," Maggie corrected. "Your living room is now a garage. But we can discuss home renovation later. We need to move." As if to emphasize her point, sounds of alien communication, clicks and high-pitched whistles, echoed from outside. "They've noticed their friend is missing," Maggie said, ushering the family toward the basement storm door that led to the backyard. "My car's out front. We'll need to run for it." Kate clutched Andy tighter. "They'll see us." Maggie pulled something from her apron pocket, a small device that looked like an old garage door opener. "Not with this, they won't." Tom recognized it immediately. Dad's electromagnetic pulse generator? The one he was always tinkering with? Maggie nodded. Jack was convinced the government was spying on him through the microwave. Paranoid as he was, he built this to short out electronics. She smiled fondly. "I noticed these aliens rely heavily on technology. Their weapons, their communication, devices, all electronic." As they reached the storm door, Maggie pressed the button. Outside, the alien troops suddenly staggered, their weapons flickering and dying. Their communication devices emitted painful-sounding feedback before going silent. "We have about 30 seconds before their systems reboot," Maggie explained, pushing open the door. "Run!" They sprinted across the yard, past disoriented aliens who clawed at their malfunctioning equipment. The Charger sat on what remained of Tom's front porch, its black paint gleaming menacingly, engines still rumbling. "Get in!" Maggie shouted, sliding into the driver's seat with surprising agility for her age. Tom helped Kate and Andy into the back before jumping into the passenger seat. The aliens were beginning to recover, their weapons flickering back to life. "Buckle up," Maggie advised, shifting the car into gear. "This might get bumpy." The Charger leapt forward with a roar, plowing through a group of aliens who had begun to approach. Their bodies made unsettling thumps against the reinforced bumper. "Where are we going?" Tom asked, gripping the dashboard as Maggie took a corner at alarming speed. "To save the world," Maggie replied matter-of-factly, her hands steady on the wheel as she ran through a roadblock of alien soldiers. "But first, we need to gather the resistance." "What resistance?" Kate asked from the back seat. Maggie smiled into the rearview mirror. "My bridge club, dear. You didn't think I was the only stubborn old-timer who stayed behind, did you?" The Charger roared down empty streets, weaving between abandoned cars and debris. Maggie drove with the confidence of someone who'd spent decades on these roads, taking shortcuts through alleys and once, terrifyingly, through someone's backyard. "Bridge club?" Tom asked incredulously, bracing himself as Maggie swerved to avoid an alien patrol. "You're telling me your bridge partners are going to help fight an alien invasion?" Maggie chuckled. "Don't let the name fool you. We haven't played actual bridge in years. It's just what we call our meetings to avoid suspicion." "Suspicion of what?" Kate asked from the back seat, her arms still protectively around Andy. "Of being the most dangerous women in town, of course," Maggie replied, taking a sharp turn onto Maple Street. "Ah, here we are." She pulled up in front of Sunshine Acres, the town's retirement community. The modest complex looked untouched by the invasion, almost suspiciously so. "They haven't attacked here yet?" Tom asked, scanning the peaceful-looking buildings. "Oh, they tried," Maggie said with a smirk. "Didn't work out too well for them." As if on cue, the front doors burst open and a group of elderly women emerged, led by a tall black woman using a cane that looked suspiciously like polished metal rather than wood. "Took you long enough, Maggie," the woman called. "Had to pick. Up the grandkids, Doris, Maggie replied, stepping out of the car. Everyone ready? Doris Johnson, 81, and the retired principal of Millfield High School nodded grimly. Ready as we'll ever be. We've got 5 of those alien bastards tied. Up in the rec room. Betty's been interrogating them. Tom stepped out of the car, mouth agape. You've captured aliens? A small Asian woman, who must have been Betty, emerged from the building, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Despite being in her 70s, she moved with the precision of someone much younger. They're not so tough when you know their weak spots, Betty said cheerfully. And I spent 40 years as the town's only veterinarian. Alien anatomy isn't that different from Earth creatures once you get past the extra limbs. Andy peered out from the car, his eyes wide. Cool, he whispered. The Bridge Club, as it turned out, consisted of 12 women, all over 65, each with skills that had apparently made them surprisingly effective against the alien invaders. There was Doris with her background in chemistry, who had developed a compound that disrupted the aliens' breathing apparatus. Betty, with her knowledge of anatomy, had identified vulnerable points in the Vex physiology. Eleanor, a former engineer, had repurposed hearing aids into devices that could intercept and decode alien communications. Ladies, Maggie announced, this is my family. They'll be joining our resistance. The women nodded approvingly, though one, a stocky woman with steel-gray hair, frowned. We're not babysitters, Maggie. Never said you were, Ruth, Maggie replied. Andy here is our future. We're fighting for him. Ruth's expression softened. Well, when you put it that way. Doris stepped forward, her cane tapping purposefully on the pavement. We've learned something important from our guests. The Vex have a central command ship hovering over the town hall. They're coordinating from there. Take it out, and their ground forces will be in disarray. How do we take out an alien spaceship? Tom asked. The women exchanged looks that can only be described as mischievous. Follow me, Eleanor said, leading them toward the community center's basement. What Tom had expected to be a crafts room or storage area had been transformed into a high-tech workshop. Tables were covered with dismantled alien technology, jury-rigged electronics, and what appeared to be improvised explosives. We've been collecting their equipment whenever we managed to neutralize one, Eleanor explained, gesturing to the alien devices. I've figured out how most of it works. Eleanor worked on the first IBM computers, Maggie whispered to Tom. She says alien tech is intuitive compared to programming with punch cards. Eleanor held up what looked like a modified version of the alien staffs. We've reconfigured their weapons to emit an electromagnetic pulse similar to Maggie's device, but much stronger. If we can get this close enough to their command ship, it should disable their systems long enough for us to board. Board? Kate echoed. You want to get on their ship? That's where the control systems are, Betty explained. According to the information we've extracted, if we can access their main computer, we can send a shutdown command to all Vex ships worldwide. Tom looked around the room at the determined faces of women old enough to be his grandmother, all preparing to battle an alien invasion. A force. It was absurd, impossible, and yet somehow he found himself believing they could actually pull it off. So what's the plan? He asked. Maggie smiled, the same smile she'd worn when teaching him to ride a bike, to fix a car engine, to face bullies. It was the smile that said she knew something he didn't. We're going to throw a party, she said, and everyone's invited. A party? Tom repeated incredulously. The world is being invaded by aliens and your plan is to throw a party? Not just any party, Maggie corrected, spreading a map of Millfield across a table. A trap disguised as a celebration. Doris tapped her metal cane on the map, pointing to the town hall. The Vex are collecting humans in central locations. We've observed them establishing processing centers in government buildings across town. Processing for what? Kate asked, her voice trembling. The women exchanged glances. Labor, Betty finally said. From what we've gathered in our interrogations, the Vex use conquered species as workers in their mining operations. Earth has rare minerals they need. They're not killing us, they're enslaving us, Eleanor added, which gives us time and opportunity. Maggie nodded. The aliens are methodical. They're working through the town section by section. But we've noticed they prioritize large gatherings of humans. Efficiency, I suppose. So you want to gather people as bait? Tom asked, appalled. As a volunteer army, Maggie corrected firmly. The people of Millfield aren't helpless, Tom. They're scared and unorganized. We give them purpose, direction, and a fighting chance. Over the next hour, the plan took shape. Using Sunshine Acres' emergency broadcast system, a relic from the Cold War that operated independently of the main power grid, they would send a message to any survivors hiding in town. The message would direct them to the community center under the pretense of alien collaboration. We'll claim we've negotiated safe passage for those who cooperate, Doris explained. The Vex will intercept the broadcast and believe we're doing their work for them, gathering humans for processing. But really, we'll be preparing everyone to fight, Ruth added, her eyes gleaming behind thick glasses. With what? Tom asked. Most people don't know how to fight aliens. They don't need to, Eleanor said, gesturing to the modified alien weapons. We've simplified the operation, point and click, essentially. Maggie pulled Tom aside while the others continued planning. I need you to do something important, she said quietly. There's a storage facility on Route 16. Jack rented a unit there years ago. Inside is something we need. She pressed a key into his palm. Unit 42. Bring back everything you find. What is it? Tom asked. Maggie's eyes twinkled. Let's just say your grandfather was preparing for an invasion of a different kind. The Soviet kind. Before Tom could ask more questions, alarms began blaring. A voice crackled over the retirement community's intercom. Vex patrol approaching. From the east, 3 minutes until contact. The women moved with surprising efficiency, gathering weapons and taking positions. Doris handed Tom a modified alien staff. Just point and pull the trigger, she instructed. The recoil is minimal. I can't leave you, Tom protested, looking at Maggie. We'll be fine, his grandmother assured him. We've handled patrols before. The storage unit is more important, Kate approached, holding Andy's hand. We're coming with you, Tom, Maggie nodded approvingly. Take the back roads, avoid main streets. The charger keys are in my pocket. As Tom helped his family into the charger, he watched the elderly women take defensive positions with the calm efficiency of seasoned soldiers. His grandmother, wielding what looked like a modified garden tool with an alien power source attached, winked at him as he pulled away. The drive to the storage facility was tense, but uneventful. The Vex seemed focused on the town center, with fewer patrols on the outskirts. Unit 42 was at the back of the facility, its roll-up door dusty with disuse. The key turned smoothly despite years of neglect, and the door rattled upward to reveal. Holy Mother of God, Tom whispered. The unit contained an arsenal that would make any military enthusiast jealous. Rifles, handguns, boxes of ammunition, and even what appeared to be military-grade explosives. Jack Miller, it seemed, had been preparing for doomsday long before aliens made it a reality. But the centerpiece was parked in the middle of the unit. A modified M35 cargo truck, a deuce and a half, painted matte black with reinforced sides and what looked suspiciously like gun mounts. Grandpa was a prepper? Andy asked, his eyes wide. Looks that way, Tom replied, finding the keys hanging from the visor. As they loaded weapons into the truck, Kate discovered a metal lockbox tucked behind the driver's seat. Inside were detailed plans, schematics for homemade EMP devices, instructions for guerrilla warfare tactics, and a letter addressed to Maggie. Kate skimmed it. Oh my God, Tom. Grandpa was part of some government program. These are classified military plans for resisting invasion. Tom stared at the papers. Grandma knew all along. The truck's engine roared to life on the first try. As they pulled out of the storage facility, Tom couldn't help but smile grimly. Grandpa Jack may have seemed paranoid in life, but in death, he might just save humanity. The Vex never saw it coming. By human standards, they were technologically superior in every way. Faster ships, more powerful weapons, advanced communication systems. But they had one critical weakness. They had no concept of human determination, particularly the determination of senior citizens with nothing left to lose. When Tom returned to Sunshine Acres with the military truck and arsenal, he found the retirement community had successfully repelled the alien patrol. 3 Vex soldiers lay incapacitated in the parking lot, their technology harvested by Eleanor and her team of retired engineers. How did it go? Tom asked, helping Maggie secure the captured alien weapons. They never learn, his grandmother replied with a satisfied smile. Always approaching from the same direction. Always using the same formations. No adaptability. Betty emerged from the community center, wiping her hands. I've analyzed their communication devices. They're receiving regular updates from the command ship. We were right. It's controlling everything. Over the next hours, the plan evolved. The emergency broadcast went out, calling survivors to Sunshine Acres under the pretense of negotiated safety. To the residents' surprise, people began arriving. First, in small groups, then in larger numbers, emerging from hiding places throughout town. By nightfall, nearly 200 townspeople had gathered. They were scared, hungry, and desperate for hope. They found it in the unlikely form of a dozen elderly women in Maggie's family. Tom watched in amazement as his grandmother stood before the crowd, her voice strong and clear as she revealed the true purpose of the gathering. We're not surrendering, she told them. We're fighting back. Tonight, we take back our town. Tomorrow, maybe the world. There were skeptics, of course. But when Eleanor demonstrated the modified alien weapons, when Betty explained the Vex vulnerabilities she'd discovered, when Doris outlined their tactical plan with the precision of a general, doubt began to transform into cautious optimism. We've identified 3 key targets, Doris explained, projecting a map of Millfield onto the wall. The command ship above Town Hall, the processing center they've established at the high school, and their ground transport depot at the shopping mall. The crowd was divided into teams, each with specific objectives. The largest group, led by Ruth and armed with modified Vex weapons, would create a diversion at the processing center, freeing captured humans and drawing Vex forces away from downtown. A second team, consisting of younger men and women with military or police background, would take Jack's weapons and assault the transport depot, destroying the aliens' ground, vehicles, and cutting off their mobility. The final team, the most crucial, would be smallest. Maggie, Tom, Eleanor, Betty, and surprisingly, Andy. I need him, Eleanor had insisted when Kate protested. His hands are small enough to reach the control panels I've identified in the Vex technology. And children are less detectable to their sensors, Betty added. Something about their bioelectrical signature. Though reluctant, Kate eventually agreed when Andy himself volunteered. I want to help, the boy had said with simple determination. As midnight approached, the teams moved into position. Maggie's group took the modified charger, now equipped, with Eleanor's most powerful EMP device, a contraption that looked like a satellite dish married to an old television set, powered by salvaged alien energy cells. Remember, Maggie instructed as they drove toward Town Hall. Once we activate the EMP, we'll have approximately 5 minutes before their backup systems engage. We need to be inside and at the control console by then. Tom glanced back at Andy, who sat between Eleanor and Betty in the back seat, his young face serious and focused. You sure about this, buddy? Andy nodded. Grandma says I'm a Miller, and Millers don't run from fights. Maggie chuckled. That's right, though sometimes we drive very fast into them. As they rounded the corner, Town Hall came into view. The Vex command ship hovered directly above it, connected to the building by a pulsing beam of light, some kind of energy tether that allowed the aliens to come and go. That's our way in, Eleanor said, pointing to the beam. According to our calculations, the EMP will disrupt the tether's containment field. It won't disappear, but it will become permeable. We can pass through it to enter the ship. Betty leaned forward. Maggie, drop us at the south entrance, then circle around for extraction once we send the signal. Maggie nodded, accelerating. Just like we planned. As they approached, a deafening explosion echoed from across town. Ruth's team creating their diversion at the high school. Almost immediately, several smaller Vex ships detached from the command vessel, speeding toward the disturbance. That's our cue, Maggie said, pulling up to Town Hall's steps. Good luck. Eleanor, Betty, and Andy quickly exited the car, carrying their equipment toward the energy beam. Tom hesitated, looking at his grandmother. You're coming too, right? Maggie shook her head. Someone needs to be ready for extraction, and I've got a feeling there might be complications. Before Tom could protest, the sound of Vex weapons fire erupted nearby. Complications indeed. The second team had begun their assault on the transport depot, but some aliens had evidently broken off to investigate Town Hall. Go, Maggie ordered, I'll keep them busy. Tom reluctantly joined the others at the energy beam as his grandmother sped away in the charger, drawing the alien's fire. Eleanor activated the EMP device. The air crackled with electricity, and the energy beam flickered momentarily before stabilizing, though it now appeared somehow less solid, more permeable. It worked, Eleanor breathed. Quickly, through the beam. One by one, they stepped into the light. The sensation of traveling through the energy beam was like moving through thick syrup while being gently electrocuted. Tom's skin tingled painfully, and his vision blurred as he emerged onto the command ship, stumbling forward with a gasp. "Everyone okay?" he asked, turning to check on the others. Betty and Eleanor nodded, though both looked disoriented. Andy, surprisingly, seemed the least affected. "That was cool," the boy whispered, his eyes wide as he took in their surroundings. They had materialized in a circular chamber with walls that seemed to pulse with internal light. The architecture was all curves and flowing lines, with no sharp angles anywhere. The floor beneath them hummed with energy. "The control room should be this way," Eleanor said, consulting a small device she'd cobbled together from alien tech. "We have about 4 minutes before their systems reboot." They moved cautiously through curving corridors, encountering no resistance. Most of the Vex had been drawn away by the diversion, leaving the command ship with minimal staff. "Where are they?" Tom whispered. "According to our intelligence, the Vex operate with a hive-like efficiency," Betty explained softly. "When not actively needed, most return to stasis chambers to conserve energy." The corridor opened into a vast, spherical room dominated by a glowing central column. Around it, 3 Vex operators manipulated holographic controls, their backs to the human intruders. Eleanor pointed to Andy, then to a small access panel near the floor. The boy nodded, understanding his role. Tom and Betty stepped forward, modified alien weapons raised. "Step away from the controls," Tom ordered. The Vex turned as one, their 4 eyes widening in what might have been surprise. One reached for a weapon, but Betty fired first. Her modified staff emitted a pulse that sent the alien crumpling to the floor, limbs twitching. The other 2 raised their hands in what seemed a universal gesture of surrender. "Eleanor! Now!" Tom called. The elderly engineer hurried to the central column, examining the alien interface. "Andy, I need you at that panel." While the boy crawled into the small maintenance space, Eleanor directed him through an earpiece. "Connect the red crystal to the pulsing blue node." "Yes, that's it." Outside the ship, the battle for Millfield raged. Ruth's team had freed hundreds of captured humans from the processing center, arming them with recovered weapons. The high school had become a makeshift command center for the human resistance, coordinated by Doris through repurposed Vex communication devices. At the transport depot, the second team had destroyed most of the alien ground vehicles, but at a heavy cost. The Vex, realizing they were under a coordinated attack, had begun using more lethal force, and circling the town hall in the increasingly damaged charger was Maggie, leading a growing number of Vex soldiers on a chase through the streets, keeping them away from the command ship. The car had taken multiple hits, its reinforced frame holding but beginning to fail. Back on the ship, Eleanor worked feverishly at the alien controls, guided by the information they'd extracted from captured Vex. "I think I've found it," she announced, "the shutdown protocol. But there's a problem. It needs authentication from a Vex commander." Tom turned to the 2 alien prisoners. "Which one of you is in charge?" The Vex exchanged looks but remained silent. Betty stepped forward, her expression grim. "I didn't want to use this, but we don't have time." From her pocket, she produced a small device with a needle-like protrusion. "This stimulates their pain receptors." The interrogations were unpleasant, but effective. Even as she approached, the leftmost Vex stepped forward. "I will comply," it said in its strange, lipless voice. "This conflict is inefficient." Eleanor looked surprised but recovered. "Quickly, place your hand on the central panel and initiate shutdown sequence Alpha 6. The alien commander hesitated only briefly before following her instructions. The central column pulsed more rapidly, its light changing from blue to red. "What's happening?" Tom asked as the ship around them began to vibrate. "I've modified the shutdown command," Eleanor explained. a hint of pride in her voice. Instead of just disabling their systems, it's sending a recall signal. Every Vex ship on Earth should be receiving orders to return to their home system immediately. Through the ship's viewing portals, they could see other Vex vessels already beginning to disengage from the town, rising upward. "We need to get off this ship before it leaves too," Betty said urgently. "Andy!" Tom called. "Time to go!" The boy emerged from the access panel, his clothes dusty but his eyes bright with excitement. "Did it work?" "It's working," Eleanor confirmed. "But we need to—" An explosion rocked the ship, sending them all staggering. Through the viewing portal, Tom saw the source. Maggie had driven the Charger directly into the town hall building below, the vehicle's trunk loaded with Jack's explosives. The blast had disrupted the energy tether connecting the ship to the ground. "Grandma!" Andy cried, pressing his hands against the portal. The ship lurched, beginning to rise. Without the tether, they had no way down. "The escape pods, the Vex," Commander suddenly said. "This way." Tom hesitated, suspicious of the aliens' unexpected help. "Why are you helping us?" Betty demanded. The commander's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "This invasion was miscalculated. Your species' resilience was underestimated, particularly your elders. It led them through winding corridors to a chamber containing small, egg-shaped vessels. These will return you safely to the surface." As they hurriedly entered one of the pods, Tom looked back at the alien. "What about you?" "I will return with my kind. Perhaps in time we will meet again under more favorable circumstances." The pod sealed around them and ejected from the ship with a pneumatic hiss. As they descended toward Millfield, they watched the massive Vex command vessel shrink to a point of light in the sky, joining dozens of others in retreat. The pod landed with a jarring thump in the town square. As the door hissed open, they were met by a crowd of cheering townspeople. Doris pushed through the crowd, her metal cane raised triumphantly. "It worked! They're leaving everywhere! Reports coming in from around the world!" Tom scanned the crowd anxiously. "Has anyone seen my grandmother?" The celebration quieted. Ruth stepped forward, her face solemn. "The explosion at Town Hall. We haven't found her yet." Andy clutched Tom's hand. "She can't be gone. Grandma's too tough." As if in answer, a familiar voice called from behind the crowd. "What are you all looking so glum about? Did we win or not?" The crowd parted to reveal Maggie, limping slightly, her clothes singed and her face smudged with soot, but very much alive. In one hand, she still clutched her cast-iron skillet, now dented almost beyond recognition. "Grandma!" Andy broke free, running to embrace her. "How did you survive the explosion?" Tom asked incredulously as he and Kate joined the reunion. Maggie winked. "I jumped out before impact, set the car to drive itself in. Your grandfather installed an autopilot system back in the 80s. Paranoid old man had his uses after all." As the sun rose over Millfield, news arrived from around the world. The Vex retreat was global. Humanity had faced an overwhelming technological, superior force, and won. News crews eventually descended on the town, eager to interview the unlikely heroes. But the Bridge Club members deflected most questions, preferring to return to Sunshine Acres for a well-earned rest. "What will you do now?" a reporter asked Maggie as she sat on her rocking chair, Andy at her feet. Maggie considered the question. "I suppose we'll rebuild. That's what humans do." "And if they come back?" the reporter pressed. Maggie's eyes twinkled as she patted her trusty skillet. "Then I suppose I'll have to save the world again. After my afternoon nap, of course." 6 months after what became known worldwide as the 7-Day War, life in Millfield had achieved a new normal. The physical damage had been largely repaired, though the occasional glint of alien metal could still be found in gardens and parks, collected by children as souvenirs of humanity's closest brush with subjugation. The psychological impact, however, ran deeper. Humanity had glimpsed its own vulnerability and its unexpected strength. Maggie Miller had become something of a reluctant celebrity. The image of her standing amid the rubble of Town Hall, cast-iron skillet in hand, had been immortalized in murals, memes, and even a larger-than-life bronze statue in the town square. which she found utterly ridiculous. The women of the Bridge Club had politely declined all offers for book deals, TV appearances, and government positions. "We've got bridge to play," Ruth had told a disappointed Pentagon official. The truth, of course, was that they were far too busy with more important matters. In the basement of Sunshine Acres, Eleanor had established what she called the Alien Tech Research Department, staffed entirely by retired scientists, engineers, and curious minds with decades of experience. The technology salvaged from the VEX had yielded breakthroughs in energy production, medicine, and communications. "Turns out you can teach old dogs new alien tricks," Eleanor often joked as she guided her team through reverse engineering VEX devices. Tom had found his calling as the liaison between Millfield and the newly formed Global Defense Initiative. His experience during the invasion, combined with his ability to translate the Bridge Club's technical jargon into layman's terms, made him invaluable to international coordination efforts. Kate had returned to teaching, but with a new curriculum that incorporated lessons from the invasion. "History is happening now," she told her students, "and you're part of it." And Andy, the boy who had crawled into alien machinery and helped save the world, had become the unofficial mascot of Millfield's youth movement. He led tours of the town's battle sites, regaling visitors with stories that grew more elaborate with each telling. "And then Grandma drove her car right through the alien mothership," he would exclaim, to the amusement of adults who knew better but didn't have the heart to correct him. As for Maggie, she had retreated from the spotlight as much as possible, returning to her farmhouse outside town. Though she deflected attention and praise, she continued to mentor younger generations in preparation for what she considered the inevitable return of the VEX, or something worse. "They'll be back," she would say matter-of-factly when asked. "Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not for years, but they'll come, and we'll be ready." On this particular autumn day, 6 months after the invasion, Maggie sat on her porch swing, watching Andy play in the yard with a group of neighborhood children. They were engaged in an elaborate game of humans versus aliens, with Andy naturally taking the role of commander of the human forces. "You can't just rush in," he instructed a younger child wielding a stick as a makeshift alien weapon. "You have to use your brain first, then your weapons." Maggie smiled. The boy had been paying attention after all. The sound of tires on gravel announced visitors. Tom's pickup truck pulled into the driveway, followed by an official-looking black SUV. As Tom approached the porch, his expression was a mixture of excitement and concern. "They've detected something," he said without preamble, keeping his voice low so Andy wouldn't hear. "At the edge of the solar system, moving fast." Maggie's eyes narrowed. "The VEX? We don't think so. Different signature entirely. Could be nothing. Could be—" He trailed off. "Something worse," Maggie finished for him. She nodded toward the SUV, where 2 suited individuals waited. "And they want my opinion, I suppose?" Tom shrugged apologetically. "You're the only human who successfully commanded a multi-pronged attack against an alien invasion. Of course they want your opinion." Maggie sighed, setting aside her knitting, a cover for the alien communication device she'd been tinkering with. "Fine, but I'm not wearing a pantsuit, and I'm bringing my skillet." Tom laughed. "I don't think anyone would expect anything less." As Maggie rose, she glanced once more at Andy and his friends. They played on, oblivious to the potential new threat approaching from the stars, secure in their belief that the adults, that Grandma, would keep them safe. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "during the invasion, I kept thinking about something my mother told me during World War II. She said that the true measure of humanity isn't the threats we face, but how we face them." She reached inside the door and grabbed her cast-iron skillet, now mounted on a polished wooden plaque given to her by the town. She'd removed it from the display almost immediately. Practical tools shouldn't be decorations. The VEX thought they were superior because of their technology, their unity of purpose, she continued. But they didn't understand that humans have something better. We have diversity. Of thought, of approach, of age, and experience. She gestured toward Andy. "That boy helped save the world because he could fit where none of us could. I helped because I'm too stubborn to die and too old to fear death. You helped because you trusted both of us. despite how crazy it all seemed. That's humanity's superpower, Tom realized. We're not a hive mind. We're millions of different perspectives, working together. Exactly. Maggie tucked the skillet into her large handbag. Now, let's go see what's coming our way this time. As they walked toward the waiting officials, Maggie called out to Andy. I'm going out for a bit, dear. Don't forget to water the tomatoes if I'm not back by evening. Okay, Grandma, Andy called back, then paused his game, studying her with surprisingly perceptive eyes. Is it aliens again? Maggie winked. Nothing I can't handle. Andy nodded solemnly, then turned back to his friends with renewed enthusiasm. Okay, new scenario. The aliens are coming back, but this time they're from a different planet. As the children's excited voices faded behind them, Tom glanced at his grandmother. Think we'll ever have normal lives again? Maggie laughed, a sound as warm and reassuring as freshly baked cookies. Normal is overrated. Besides, I'm 72 years old. I've been saving the world in small ways my entire life, raising children, teaching values, preserving knowledge. The only difference now is the scale. She patted her bag where the skillet rested. And the aliens, of course. The aliens are definitely new. As the SUV pulled away from the farmhouse, carrying Maggie toward whatever new challenge awaited humanity among the stars, a shooting star streaked across the afternoon sky, perhaps a piece of Vex technology burning up in the atmosphere, or perhaps a harbinger of things to come. Either way, Earth was ready. Grandma was on the job. The end